What's up, players? Welcome to another special DLC episode of Ready Press Play, your weekly source of everything that's new and exciting in the world of video games. Every Friday at 6 a.m. Pacific time or 9 a.m. Eastern time, we typically talk with you about all the biggest gaming news of the week, notable releases, games we're playing, games we love, all that good stuff. But occasionally we do these special episodes where we get to dig deep into one topic or one video game in particular and talk about it for an hour or however long really we want to talk about it. Today we're going to be doing that with the game Halo Combat Evolved. We're going to be getting a little bit more into that. But remember, if you want to reach the podcast, you can go to readyplaynetwork.com and you can also find us on Ready Press Play on TikTok and Twitter. My name is Daniel Lima. I'm your host for today, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Louis Menchaca.
Dan, this has been a long time coming. I think this is like the longest time it took us to beat a game for the book club, by the way, because I think we started in December, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah. No, dude, because like December, now that I'm thinking about it, like we did our last stream before our break in
yeah,
December with this
and
game,
it
but
was
at that
Halo.
point
Yeah,
we had already streamed it for like I want to say like 4 or 5 weeks, right? Like we probably started in November. That's my
probably
my point,
actually.
right?
Wow,
Yeah.
that's terrible. I actually went back and watched those streams just so that I can prepare for this spoiler cast. That's how bad it's been. So I gotta like jog my memory and remember all the missions and everything. So yeah, I also in preparation for this, I also watched a story explained where it was like a 20-minute long YouTube video just
Oh
breaking down the
wow.
plot like beat by beat, so that way I actually understood what the hell is happening. So I'm very happy, and it's the game is not quite as complicated as one might think. I will say that.
Yeah. I did get out of my way to watch some videos as well. I watched two videos, but they were both pretty short. They were both like I think 3 minutes or under. It was very much just like here's what happened this game and the main beats and stuff. But all right, we're about to get more into that. I just wanted to tell our listeners that the way we typically do these spoiler cast episodes, in case you're new here, is that we talk spoiler free for a few minutes, usually just saying, whether we like the game or not, whether we recommend the game or not. And then we dive into full spoilers later on. I have a feeling that for this game, there's not like any like super huge spoilers that would ruin the game for you because that's not really what it's about, and we'll get into that. But in case you're worried about that, we're going to put a time code in the show notes about when we're actually going to be talking about spoilers there. But before we get into that, Lewis, how you doing? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah. So this game actually, I want to say that this is one of those kind of like this is one of those good games that you can like really like take a design student and have them like like learn about game design from this game because it's very rudimentary. It's like
Hmm.
it's at the precipice of like of greatness, and I think it was great back then. I think if people were to review the game back then, like in 2002, I want to say when it came out.
2001.
2001.
Yeah.
Okay, so back in the day, I would say that people would be giving nines and tens to this game, which I don't think that's necessarily true for today's standards, but it's
Yeah.
still really good, and I think it does a lot with so little. I think with reusing
Hmm.
assets, reusing levels and stuff like that, like certain more than one mission takes place in the same level, but it's going the other way, kind of thing. So I think it's really good. It's yeah, I would say that
Dude,
it's a solid game all around.
what you just said just made me think of something we didn't talk. I was debating on talking about this on our last episode of the regular show. But did you see the thing that was going around on Twitter last week about how there was an article that somebody wrote where it was like developers try to trick players into getting this new asset, which is really just a reskin of an old asset or something. It was related to like an Assassin's Creed. Like they added a new like piece of content to Assassin's Creed, but it was distributed for free. And then somebody wrote an article that was making the rounds where they were like talking shit about like this thing because it was reusing old assets. And then all the developers on game dev Twitter jumped on it, being like, "Dude, you have no idea how games are made. A lot of things are reused, and it's just part of it. Like that's just what it is. It's like you can't make everything from scratch. A lot of times you just gotta especially because actually one of the things that is taught is like, hey, like you shouldn't spend your time making something if it's only going to be used that one time. You know what I mean? Like you should make things that can be reused and work as building blocks for other things, right? And it's a tale as old as time with video games, basically. Because even if you go back all the way to like Super Mario Brothers, the assets for the clouds is the
Yeah.
same assets as
The
the little
grass.
bushes and things like
Yeah.
that. And I agree with you. You see a lot of that in this game. But I'm gonna go as far as to say as with this game, I feel like when you play it in 2021, it does feel very samey, like to the point where it's not quite good.
Fun.
Like
Fun, I would
or
say.
fun, yeah.
Yeah.
Fun is a good word where you go through a lot of the same environments over and over again, or environments that are very similar. And a lot of the environments don't feel particularly innovative, or it doesn't really feel like there's innovative is not a good word for a 20-year-old game, but like it doesn't feel like there's much of a soul there, like it feels like um a lot of the environments that were built for this game were pretty much a means to an end. Like,
Hmm.
hey, like we need to keep the players around here for an hour, like, killing enemies. So let's build it this way so that they go this way and then come back. And, there's like a lot of backtracking, there's a lot of reused rooms. And
Mm-hmm.
I would go as far as to say is
Have fun with that.
yep. Now, I don't think the game is very fun nowadays because I feel like a lot of I feel like we've come a long way since then to the point where a lot of those things that would not have been a problem in 2001 feel like they're kind of hampering my enjoyment of the game nowadays. So I feel like while I wouldn't say that the game was a chore to play, like I didn't think it was like that bad. I also don't know if I really had that much fun either. And I hope you don't feel offended by that, considering that we played it together. Like we did have moments of fun, but I feel like the moments of fun were almost like sprinkled across a lot of tedious moments as well.
Or I
Uh,
think the moments of fun were between ourselves when we were commenting about how tedious things were.
that's true. There's a level of that as well. Do you need to quit and restart so that you can get me on video there again?
Yep. All right.
All right, I'll let you do that. Hey again.
Hello.
Yeah. Lewis and I were theorizing about how like it seems like I always get disconnected about an hour into the call. Well, that's out of the window
That
because
exactly
I
is.
got disconnected like 8 minutes in.
I know.
Great.
But yeah, so just in regards to the game, like I mean, is it fair to compare the game to 2021 standards when so many games that have come after have been inspired by this game? Like
Hmm.
I would go as far as to say that it's definitely a good study. It's like one of those kind of things where it's like people can like learn a lot from it. There's still stuff to be gleaned from it, like as far as like world building and telling a story and everything like that.
Hmm.
And also just practical game designs from like being able to like of course make get the most extract the most out of any one level or any certain amount
Hmm.
number of assets and things like that. And also I mean I gotta hand it to them, the gunplay was actually kind of fun. Like just shooting the guns is just kind of fun as hell, and I can understand when we played the
Hmm.
multiplayer, like the multiplayer aspect, it's solid. It is very, very
Right.
solid, and it felt very tight. And I mean, of course, the controls are obviously customizable. And I don't know if it was customizable back then, but obviously you can customize it now. Yeah, I think this is like that in between blend where it's like we're at the precipice of like modern shooters when it comes to Halo Combat Evolved, but it's also got that like Nintendo 64 or GoldenEye vibe where like the weapons spawn in the exact same place every time. So as long as you
Hmm.
memorize the map or you memorize the layout, memorize where the drops are at, you're always gonna get the shield, get the sniper, get the rocket launcher, whatever you
Yeah.
want to do. So it's like I think there's some I'm not gonna say novelty to it, but I will say there's I don't know, like a almost like that Goldilocks perfect sweet spot in it as well. It's like
Hmm.
it's old school but also new at the same time. I don't know if that's a good thing or if that's more speaks to someone my age or whatever.
I will, I will give credit to where credit is due to the game as well, which is like it's interesting. We spend most of our time playing this game, playing the campaign, which is not that long of a campaign. It's roughly I think 10 hours, or maybe we took some more
We
because
took
we're not
11
that
because we
good at it.
sucked. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But when we played like I think just one match of multiplayer, but the one match of multiplayer that we played was actually probably where I had the most fun with the game. And the great thing about it too is like, oh, the interesting thing about it is that when in the very beginning, Lewis killed me like 2 or 3 times in a row before without me even hitting him. And I think it was mostly because he found like a really good location to like where I couldn't see him, but he could see me. So he was just like boom, like we're just like one
Sniping.
shotting me basically
Yeah.
over and over again. Yeah. But I kind of had a comeback, and then towards the end it was a little bit more balanced. And then ultimately I still lost. But that match, like I found myself just kind of laughing and like getting pissed off, but also like getting engaged with the game during the entirety of that match, which made me realize, like there's a lot of people that are into Halo for the story, but I feel like a lot of people are also into it for the multiplayer. And I could see where that, especially when I put myself into um, my younger self of 2001, 2002, 2003, I could see that Daniel like had him found this game and was playing this game with his friends, that I would have had a lot of fun from the multiplayer more even than I did from the story, and I still had fun with that today. um I did want to say, like you had a good point. Like it's not fair to just compare this game to games that are coming out 20 years after it that were influenced by it, and then. But I guess my point in saying that is that I think the value of a game like this is more in the kind of like historical aspect of analyzing it and seeing where games came from, than in straight up like this is a game that holds up and that you can have a great deal of fun nowadays. Like I don't think, and I can see how some people would defend that. I just don't think I saw it that way. As opposed to like I could be wrong about this, but I feel like a game like Super Mario World, I feel like if you give that game to a kid nowadays, they would have fun with it. Versus, I don't necessarily know if they would with Halo. This Halo in particular.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't even know when we're gonna get into spoilers because I don't even know if that's a thing. Can we like just call this as a review cast instead of a spoiler cast? Because like
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say or comment on. I mean, I can give you like the story breakdown and stuff like that, which I guess people may not want to know. But really, in general, like the story is almost besides the point because real talk, Dan and I were not even paying attention to the cutscenes whenever the game was happening. We were
Yeah.
just having fun with the gunplay. With each levels, they were doing like different things where each levels like were designed around a certain weapon or a certain vehicle or a combination of guns and vehicles. Like the game's levels were varied and stuff as far as like execution and how they guided you and stuff like that. So I think that's really I think people, as far as my understanding going into it, like people were making a big hubbub about the story. But for me personally, as far as like a franchise starter, I don't think the story was really where it was at. That could be the case in
No.
maybe like Halo 2 or Halo 3, maybe, but
Yeah.
definitely not Halo 1, especially because. Um, generally speaking, a good franchise starter doesn't become like you don't uh, be ambitious out the gate. Think about like the Tom Cruise, the Mummy. They were trying to run before learning how to crawl, kind of thing. So I think with this, they just kind of sort of started somewhere, and then it just grew from there.
I'm gonna go as far as to say is I think the story almost feels like a little bit of an afterthought to the game, and I don't even mean to say as that as negatively. I just think that it comes across to me like they came up with the guns and the enemy types and the level types and the challenges they wanted to do and the vehicles and all of that stuff, and it feels like that was the focus of the game. And that the story came later. The story was like, okay, how do we justify all these things? How do we get the players to go through these actions and actually test all of these gameplay mechanics and get used to the gameplay mechanics so that they can go and have fun and perform well in multiplayer. It really feels like a game like this would have been developed for the multiplayer, and that the story is almost like a means to an end to get you there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so
And I bet that that changes later on. Like I don't presume that that's what the entire franchise is about. But that's what I felt from this first game, especially because even we kind of spaced out a little bit during the cutscenes, and we paid attention to a few, and then
The
later I
more
went back.
critical ones, I would say we paid attention.
Yes,
Yeah.
we went back and we watched like I mean I watched some videos and you watched some other videos about the story, and I felt like the story was actually very simple. Like
Yep.
when you watch videos of it, it's like that's well let's say like we're gonna get into spoilers beginning now potentially, but I don't feel like there's any major spoilers to this game really. Like the game is not really about the story, like we're just saying,
Yeah.
or it doesn't have us revelatory of the story. um, but what is the story? It's like, okay, you're this Master Chief guy, right? Who's
Spartan.
like who's this pardon, and whose origins off we don't really find out until other games. Which I know some details about it, but like that's more of a Halo Reach thing. On this game, you're just this, almost like unnamed, like sort of, generic character with a cool armor.
Hmm.
Then you go out there and you gotta go and land on this planet and figure out what's going on. And there's this, race of enemies called the Covenant. And there's like Halo is the name of this. I think it's called an artificial planet. I think that's what they refer to it as. Turns
Yeah.
out at the end that it's this big weapon, so you got to destroy it. It almost kind of feels like a dumbed down version of the first Star Wars.
I was like gonna
Like
say that actually.
yeah,
Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope.
yeah,
Okay. So Star Wars Episode 4 starts off in the middle of a chase. Like the big opening crawl, and then the spaceships like zoom through, and they're being fired at and stuff like that. Like Leia's being chased and everything.
hmm
That literally is how the game starts in Halo Combat Evolved, where like the Covenant is shooting at them. What's the name of that ship? I forgot. It's like the something Autumn, or I forgot what it's called. But the name of their ship, and like now they got to make a crash landing, and so like a very emergency crash landing and stuff like that. And they get out, eject out in a space pod, just like R2 and
hmm
C3PO and stuff like that. And basically, yeah, like the game just literally just is the game starts off in media res, which is like a literary term about like in the middle of an action. It starts
hmm
off in media res, and you just sort of don't really. The game doesn't really go out of its way to tell you what the hell is really going on and stuff like that. I think it's really hard to pay attention, especially because a lot of the dialogue is happening while you're gunning down in the hallways and fighting Covenant and stuff like
yeah.
that. It's like the game really doesn't really give you time to like pause or recollect and stuff like that. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Like maybe it's obviously done with intent. I will say that.
hmm
But yes, I don't know what else. I don't know what to say. What else to say? Go for it.
Well, and later on, so we get introduced to the Covenant as being, the bad guys that we're at war with,
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning of the game. But later they introduced this different enemy type that are called the Flood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Flood, they're more like these parasites that they look more monster like. And I remember as we were playing the game, I don't even think Lewis and I really understood the difference of the difference between the two factions until later on.
When they're fighting each
But I
other,
remember
yeah.
yeah, but I remember at one point we're like, "Oh, the enemies changed quite a bit. Like those almost look like Resident Evil enemies now." Those were the Flood,
Mm-hmm.
versus while the Covenant they looked more like were I guess like smarter aliens, like more like humanoid like aliens. Versus suddenly we're fighting these monster looking things and parasitical looking things. Those were the Flood. Turns out towards the end that they're attacking each other as well, and that Halo was this weapon that was built to get rid of the Flood, but the way that it would kill the Flood was by killing everybody else in the process as well. That was my understanding of
Yes.
it, at least.
Yes.
Um,
So like the flood is a parasitic thing that like leeches off and feeds on like
mhm,
biological life and stuff like that. And so the halo ring is basically like this weapon, so it just pulses out like this thing that kills like all sentient life, or all like biological mass or whatever. And what happens is the flood will then die too, because they have nothing to feed on. And
mhm,
so the Master Chief didn't know that, and he left Cortana in like the control room and during the missions and stuff like that, and he ran off because Cortana was like, "Go tell Captain Keyes to stop, to like go stop him," and so he just rushes off and stuff like that, and then he finds a little AI guy like this evil what is this Ultron, basically Ultron.
mhm.
And he's like, yeah, I can help you stop the flood. Yeah, it's like let's just do this and stuff. Let's just go to the main control room and activate Halo. And that's literally what happens. Is like Cortana's like, actually, don't do that, because that's what's gonna end up happening, is gonna kill everyone. and then that's the cutscene that when me Dan and I shut the hell up and we were just like watching intently as like things are going down. We didn't have a truly understanding because I knew shit was going down, but I didn't know what the hell was going down. But the two AIs are like talking with smack with each other and everything like that, and
Yeah.
but yeah, so basically that's the whole situation is like the flood is just like they were being contained within like this I guess those weapon storage cache they or what they thought was weapons like a weapons vault. But I guess Captain Keys and his people just like accidentally let them out, and now everything has gone to hell. So that's
Yep.
where we sort of step into. I guess we did the thing because by destroying the halo at the end of the game. I'm assuming that kills the flood, but that's really like not really made clear, especially because
Yeah.
they're just jetting off into space. So
Now, here's an interesting question about that, right? Is the name of this game is Halo, and Halo is the name of this, circular
ring, yeah.
planet, yeah, planet slash weapon slash whatever it is. Um, and it's kind of interesting that we end the game by destroying it, but there's like 5 games after that, right? That are also called Halo, right? So I want to ask you right now, with no context of the rest of the story. I assume you don't know the rest of the
Nope,
story.
I don't know.
Like, do you think there's another Halo that comes back later? Do you think there are multiple Halos,
I
or
honestly,
does?
if I were a betting man, there are multiple Halos. There isn't just one. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like the thing.
And the other thing is, like, before we play this, did you know what Halo was? Like, did you know why it was called that?
I had no idea. I mean,
Okay.
I think I played like Halo, like I like these. So remember I told you how I played the first couple of chapters and stuff like that. I
Mhm.
think I knew going into it what Halo was in the sense that it's this giant floating ring with like
Right.
land and stuff like that, like its own biosphere and stuff like that. So I didn't think anything more beyond that. I was like, oh, it's just we're fighting on a Halo. You know, that's kind of what I.
Mhm.
But I didn't realize I didn't take any like I never got to the part where when my first playthrough about where it's a weapon or anything like that. And even if I did, I wouldn't know because it's hard to pay attention to the plot. So
Mhm. Fair enough. Yeah, that was one of the things that I was asking myself. It's like, it's kind of interesting that the name of the franchise is Halo, when Halo's, like, the Halo's purpose in the story of the franchise seems like, it's important. I mean, it's ultimately what you end up, doing in the game, but it feels like the story could be about so much more than just, the Halo. It's almost like as if Star Wars was called
Death Star.
uh yeah, Death Star, exactly.
Yeah.
So, uh, that seemed a little odd to me to figure out kind of what the game is truly about, or the name of the game is truly about. Now we also get to see a few characters in this game, not a lot of them, but the characters that we see mostly are Master Chief himself, Cortana, and Captain Keys, right?
hmm
And then maybe the little robot, the AI, could be considered one as well. What do you think of the characters as they were introduced in this game?
They're mostly flat and two dimensional and stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
Captain Keys is a bit of a hard ass. The Jarvis, not the Jarvis, the Ultron AI is just kind of like very like mute and kind of like not like I guess underplayed and stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
nothing too vivacious about him. He's very emotional and just very like static. The only two characters that had any semblance of any kind of chemistry was of course Cortana and Master Chief, because Cortana is a very sassy AI. It almost kind of reminds me of like Iron Man and Jarvis in the Iron Man movies,
Hmm.
where like Jarvis gives Iron Man lip sometimes, and so does she.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say that if anything, like Master Chief is very stoic and he's very like he's almost kind of like doesn't have too much dialogue. I guess they're trying to make him
Hmm.
like Link. He doesn't have a
Yeah.
face, that kind of thing. So they're trying to make it so that he's like embodying the player, so to speak. And so I think Cortana is really like the lead of the franchise, and
Mhm.
other than Master Chief, but like truly like as far as like exposition dumps, I guess comedy, yeah, I guess those are like the more two focal points as far, whereas Master Chief just goes shooty shooty bang bang, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, fair enough. And yeah, like, ultimately my opinion in that front, and I wanted to hear what you had to say as well, is that there's not a lot of character in this initial game yet either. As in, we we don't really see much from Master Chief, and I don't think we will in the majority of the series, most likely. I know Cortana gets, built up to be this great character that is a fan favorite, and I know about that, and I know that Halo fans and Halo players in general are really into Cortana. But I didn't really end the first game feeling that way yet. I feel like we have not seen her true, her full potential as a character yet, and I feel like that's probably one of those things that's gonna become true in one of the later games, probably Halo 2 or 3, where she gets more of a role. Because even with her being the biggest character in the game, like you said, like the lead in terms of character, when you think about the amount of hours that we played at the game and then the amount of time that we actually saw her or saw her dialogue, it really wasn't that much, right? So I feel like it's one of those things where there's still a lot to develop in that front that I'm excited to see in the upcoming games as well.
I'm assuming
Um,
that their relationship builds and grows together. I would
yeah.
say that it's probably like the central focal point of the franchise is probably Cortana and Master Chief. Oh, and
Yeah,
also
agreed.
shout out to Cortana being like the official like AI or voice of Windows 10. So
Oh yeah,
yeah.
there's that. I forgot about that. That's true. It's so annoying, dude. Like a lot of times, like I don't even know what button or what you're supposed to press to bring that up, but I always do it accidentally. Like I'll just be using my computer, doing something, doing work, doing the podcast, whatever, and then suddenly Cortana just pops up, and it's like, "Oh, do you need anything?" And I'm like, "No, get out." So, yeah,
Yeah.
there's that.
By the way, I
Such
just
a
gotta say,
go ahead.
as for when it comes to the gameplay mechanics, I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say that the shotgun might be the best weapon out of all of them. Like there's the assault rifle, there's like needle.
Hmm.
The needle gun is the worst gun in Halo, by the way. It's so
Hmm.
laggy. You shoot and then like the little thing just spurts a little bit and it floats in the air and then it goes. And I'm like, that's very weird and like terrible and. Yeah, so that's the worst gun, but the shotgun is awesome because like when you're facing down the flood, all those parasites are jumping at you like kind of like Alien. Uh, he just that shotgun just blasts and like pops everyone at once
Hmm.
and stuff like that. I enjoyed the shotgun a lot as like my go-to weapon. I would always go for shotguns and try to get as many shells as possible. But other than the shotgun, I did like the rocket launcher. But the thing is, the rocket launcher was so few and far between during the missions and stuff like that, as far as like being available. By the way, I have a complaint. I just thought of it just now. I hated the fact that whenever I respawn from a death, that I don't respawn with all the same weapons and gear and ammo. Like I'm basically at the default, and it just
You
sucks.
know, it seemed kind of random because I felt like in some circumstances I did respawn with the weapons that I had previously, and in some circumstances I did not. And I always thought that was very weird. I wonder if there's like
Well, I
certain
weren't
moment.
you like playing a lot with the default? Because I almost saw you like always use the AR, and if the AR
Yeah,
is the default, so you're gonna respawn with the AR because that was in your hand.
fair enough.
I'd
Maybe.
always go out of my way to get the shotgun
Mhm,
or like the rocket launcher. Seldomly the sniper. There was one level where they gave you the sniper to start with because it's kind of like
mhm.
the level design was designed with long shots in mind. So yeah. Also, yeah, another shout out to the level design because the level design was designed around the weapons that they chose. Also, shout out to all the vehicles like the tank, the warthog, and the banshee, and I'm pretty sure there's
Yes.
others.
I definitely wanted to give a shout out to the vehicles because that was also one of the aspects of the game that I felt was the most fun and that still held up to an extent, considering how old it is.
Other than the
Like there,
controls.
yes, so there are issues with it, of course. So let's start with a Warthog, right, which is the iconic Halo vehicle.
Yeah.
The controls of the Warthog, I felt were not very easy to use, and it could be very frustrating. But I also felt like the more we used it, the more we kind of like started getting the hang of it. Like by the end of the escape sequence, I know you were kept driving. You had gotten pretty good at it
I
by
was like
then.
Tokyo drifting that hoe, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. But I have to say that even in the moments that it was frustrating to control, I still felt like it was fun. Like the idea of one of the players driving while the other player is shooting from the passenger seat or from the back, and like we're going through this map together. Like there were moments where they were able to use that in a way that was really fun with the level design. I think the first few levels where we encounter the warthog, especially, like I felt like it was pretty cool to
The beach.
be able, yeah, the beach, like to be able to just kind of go through the level faster and just kind of like mow down enemies while driving past them and stuff. So I did enjoy that part. I think the Banshee was the flying one.
Hmm.
The Banshee was really good too. Like I really liked whenever we were using the Banshee. I thought, go ahead.
Surprisingly controlled well.
Yes, yes, exactly. And like flying controls in it are kind of difficult to do in a like fun, arcadey, intuitive way in games, and they were able to do that there. And it's the same for vehicles as well, actually. So I, I feel like we've come a long way since then. I actually do wonder. That's one of the things that I'm going to be curious to see with the other Halo games. I wonder if they've kept the controls of the Warthog the same for the other games, or if they've been adapted with time,
Hmm.
because I wouldn't be surprised if they kept it the same. Because Halo, as far as I know, is kind of a bit of a conservative like franchise where they like things the way they are, and they a lot of times they keep things the way they are because that's what players have grown to love from it.
Hmm.
So I'll be curious to see how that changes, if at all, through the franchise as well. But nonetheless, my point is like the vehicles in the game I still think were fun to go through. Final escape sequence had so much potential to be this great epic moment, and at times it was, but for the most part, it was just frustrating as hell because that level was not set up to be fun to drive through.
Right.
It was and like at times it was like you could see what they were doing, like, oh, they're setting up these ramps so that you can make these cool jumps and stuff. But there were also moments where it was almost like they were intentionally trying to block you over and over again. It almost felt like you were fighting against the level in
Hmm.
certain ways, and I
And
didn't think that
I
was
had to
fun.
memorize the level during the escape sequence
Yeah.
after trial and error. That I literally like by the towards the like the last three tries, like I was going really well because I memorized the layout, the turns, and I got so attuned to the jankiness of like the. It's not a very tight. They're not. It's not tight, and it kind of feels very heavy. Like there's not much
Mhm.
acceleration, and there's the top speed. Surprisingly, it's faster than running and stuff like that as Master Chief, but you don't really feel the speed. Like you don't
Yeah.
really notice. I never really truly noticed the speed until like I got accidentally got off the thing and Dan is taking off without me, when he was driving and stuff like that. So, but like other than that, you don't really feel velocity and the yeah acceleration's trash. The you can't turn on a dime on anything, and it's just yeah. It's just really weird. I guess it kind of just goes to show like the old school gamers are just good. Like old school gamers would just like
Mhm.
they would overcome that adversity of janky game design and still be good. It's like when you play Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo, it's not like that really well. Like you can't the turns are not that good, but somehow you can still find
Mhm.
somebody who's a pro player at Super Mario Kart. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah. Yeah, with Halo, I'd be curious to watch like a speed run of Halo Combat Evolved. But when they do the speed runs that where you can't use any like cheats or bugs in the level, you're just supposed to like play the game as it's played, but just really well.
Hmm.
I would be curious to see a speed run like that, especially for that level, because there must be some kind of critical path that you can do through that level where you don't really hit any of the obstacles and you're making all the jumps and stuff. And if a player is able to fulfill that, then they would probably have like a great experience. But with our skill level when trying to do the level and just like failing over and over again, we were not able to do that.
Towards the end, I got
Um,
better so that way we didn't flip over. When we did the jumps, there were a couple of times where the
mhm,
warthog would just like flip over and like we would crash, and like get like ejected out of the car and stuff like that. But there were a lot of times, like especially towards like the later runs, where like I was like learning how to like it's got like this dual stick setup where like your left stick kind of like drives, but the right stick is the what makes the turns and stuff like that. And a lot of times when it comes to like the camera angle, whenever you're like driving off the ramp, you still have to use the right stick to control the camera angle, so it actually controls
mhm.
like the angle at which the car goes. And I didn't figure that out towards the end. I think it's really weird that camera controls is what controls where you're going, but it is what it is. I guess there really wasn't a playbook back then. I'm not sure, but I would imagine that's probably not the case if you're talking about like the PS2 generation and the GameCube, early GameCube generation. Or, actually, no, the GameCube probably
Mhm.
didn't even come out at that time. So yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. When it comes to the design as well with the game, it's kind of interesting. Like, do you think that like do you think that this game is well designed, and do you think or actually obviously it is. It wouldn't have been a successful game otherwise, but what were the things that you think this game did for the time, maybe you that are a little bit older than me, that you think were smart, clever, or innovative like design decisions at the time, that were like that kind of broke new ground for this game? I think that would be something interesting to read
I
about.
would say the consistent action, like you're always mowing down enemies and stuff like that. I think the game
Hmm.
really like there it's very it's very small like as far as like the designs, but there were a very expansive parts like big cliffs and stuff like that where you're driving around saving marines in different camps and stuff like that. You know, the times that we got lost, you know, like I think there's
Hmm.
something about like having this like expansive, it's like I guess it does have like like that Star Wars effect, because the thing about 1977 and Star Wars is like, you know, the hero's journey has been told like forever and ever, and there's nothing new. But it's the world, it's the expanse, it's the imagination that you know got people going. I would imagine that this is what it was for gaming. It's like you have all these weapons, you got these cool enemies, they're actually fighting each other. There's factions. There's like this basically this
That
grand
was really
story.
cool, by the way. The enemies fighting each other, like that, like AI on AI kind of dynamic interaction is not something that's like really easy to do to the point where, I remember watching a video about The Last of Us Left Behind, because they had the zombies and the human enemies fight each other in that DLC, and I think they talked about how they tried doing that in the original game, but they ran out of time or they weren't able to do it or whatever, and then they brought it later on Left Behind and then used it again on The Last of Us Part Two. And it's kind of cool that they were able to get that tech in there for in a game like Halo. I'm sure that that was something that was really cool at the time, especially like, oh shit, like
And
look, like you're
the Marines weren't
yeah, go ahead.
useless either.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like they also contributed to in some of the combat like sequences and etc. What would you say was like maybe your favorite level? Like I don't really remember all of them that much because like you said we did play the majority of this game last year.
Hmm.
But each level I felt like was relatively unique. Despite my complaints about the repetitiveness of the game, it was almost like the repetitiveness happened within a level, but from one level to the other things were switched up quite a bit.
Yeah, I would say the level where you're rescuing Captain Keys, or is it Keys?
Hmm.
Yeah, the level,
Yes.
okay, because it starts off with the sniper rifle and stuff like that. You're doing like this full on like ambush thing with Marines and stuff like that. There's all kinds of pandemonium happening, which is really cool. By the way, very bombastic game
Hmm.
design. Music top notch. Also, shout out to the music. Shout out to the composer. They not only is the music just top notch, even like dare I say, like still like blows everyone else in the modern day out the water. But also the cues are always good. Like whenever like the juices get flowing, whenever like the song kicks in, when you know you're going the right direction. So,
That's
and
true.
then you're mowing down even more enemies and stuff like that. And like there's like this big ass like gravity, like you know, beam me up Scotty thing going on, where you have to the aliens are coming down and you're like shooting them and mowing them down. They're like these turrets and stuff like that. That's really cool. And then on top of that, you're holding the line when all these aliens are coming to rush you, and then you get like beamed up, and then you're going through all these jail cells and you're rescuing Captain Keys. I think that is a really good level. Like just mwah, very chef kiss there. Like it was. I think that one stands out for me because there's just so much going on and everything just feels so right. Like I would say, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, fair enough. I think when I think about it, I think for some reason the ice levels kind of stuck with me a little bit more, and I don't necessarily know why. I think he was, finding the banshees for the first time and then just kind of going around shooting everybody, flying around. Um,
The ice level was kind of wonky to me because okay, there was so much backtracking. Number one, like that's just,
right.
but it was so frustrating. Like we kept
That's
dying
also
and
the one. Yeah, that's also
yeah,
the one where he got lost at some
yeah,
point, and etc. And you know what? The end. Like the escape sequence had its moments, despite the fact that it was frustrating at times as well. But the end leading up to the escape sequence, I also think was pretty good because that's when you saw like the most amount of just like enemies, like and how we already mentioned it a few times with the enemies fighting each other, and you're just trying to get all of them and etc. So that was fun as well. There are a lot of like little fun moments throughout the game. Um, but like I said, I still feel like I ultimately come down lukewarm on it in 2021 because I do think there was a lot of tedious moments. I know that a lot of people probably would hear this and be like, blasphemy, Halo
yeah.
is one of the best games of all time and etc. But I can't help it, man. Like I didn't play this game in 2001. I'm
Yeah.
playing it now, so
Do you like
and I
how
feel like
like the final level it takes place in the first level, the same ship? Yeah.
Yeah, things like that are always cool. Like I've played some other games that did things like that as well. I always appreciate it. Um, but yeah, dude, like I guess that's just how I feel about it. Like when we played BioShock last year, I kind of felt like that held up better. I just felt like that there was a little bit more meat there, that was still interesting nowadays, like with the story especially, right? I feel
Hmm.
like ultimately with this game, maybe I had high expectations for what the story was going to tell us, and with the story just kind of being, I don't know, just kind of being there, and with the gameplay being the focus. The gameplay was fun, but then at times repetitive, and then it lacked like a very compelling or interesting story.
What did you
So I couldn't help.
what did you think about
hmm,
the game controls? Like, what do you think of the button mapping and how they handle it?
After we got used to it, I was happy with it. I didn't have much trouble with it after we really knew where everything was. I'm used to, in modern shooters, a lot of times you press a button to aim and then the
Yeah.
other button to shoot and
Hmm.
things like that. And I'm used to pressing, like square on the PlayStation controller to reload. And in this case, it would have been the X button, but it was a different button to
It was the
reload
right
instead.
bumper.
So yeah, exactly. So there's like a few like weird things like that when it comes to how controls are typically mapped nowadays. But to be honest, with controls, a lot of times it's like you can just like learn it in a few minutes and then you're good.
Yeah.
After our first playthrough, I didn't really find myself making a lot of mistakes, except for when we didn't play for a long period of time and
When
then
we
we're
came
playing it
back,
again.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I would say when we came back, I think for me, like I got really attuned, really accustomed, really fast. I think I think it was just like riding a bike for me personally. But yeah, it is interesting that we don't press the left trigger to like aim down sights and then right trigger to shoot. So it's like the left trigger throws a grenade, and like the left bumper changes the type of grenade in your hand, and like the right bumper is
hmm
the reload button, and then like the B button is for like melee and stuff like that. And it just I think B is probably like the correct button for melee even in today's standard if I'm not mistaken, or is it just or it could be the right stick. I don't remember it, but basically
hmm
it's I think it works. I would say that, but I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure like I think the Master Chief collection is like it lets you do full on button remaps like wholesale, which I didn't want to mess with because I wanted to play the game in the 2001 button mapping, the default.
On that note, I do want to say, we played this game on Xbox Series X through the Master Chief Collection. So we are playing the remastered version of the game that was remastered for the 360 and then I think remastered
Anniversary.
again potentially or updated. Yeah, like the anniversary version on the 360 and then it obviously got updated on the Master Chief Collection, which then got,
The one,
patches on Series X and
the
etc.
first there was the One X patch, which the One X brought it to 4K, and then of course
hmm
the Series X keeps all of the One X benefits. So if it's running on 4K, then you get the 4K version. Which of course I didn't play it in 4K because number one, my monitor that's right here that's 1080p, and number two, I'm pretty sure Twitch couldn't stream in 4K even if I wanted to. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
the we did go out of our way for at least once per level per chapter. Dan and I would like toggle the button to see the old graphics and stuff like that. Yeah, the I will say that fresh coat of paint really makes the game look like it's a modern 2021 game, even by today's standards.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous skylines, good water, good particle effects, good
hmm
lighting. Yeah, exquisite lighting actually, because you see the old lighting, it's all dark and just
Yeah.
yeah, and then like here it's all
I
like
wanted
neon.
I wanted to give shout outs to what the game, looks like when playing it in that version because it definitely holds up from a visual perspective when you played that version of the game on the Master Chief collection. I think that if you played it with the old graphics or if you played the original version of the game back in the original hardware, that it would have been painful to go through from a visual perspective because those old like extremely like dark gray
Textures,
polygonal
yeah.
levels and textures, I feel like really wouldn't hold up that well. But it was pretty easy to play it from a visual perspective with the more updated version of the game. So shout out to the remasters.
So it's funny. Funny side note is that even the old version of the game, whenever it's got those patches, it's still with those polygonal textures. It still runs in 4K 60, which is crazy.
hmm
It's like how the hell is an old 480p game like up res like so like 10 times over to run in 4K and stuff like that. So, but yeah, um, as far as like my sentiments as well, like you said that you were like lukewarm on the game, and I kind of am too. Like I didn't want to like just come out and
Mhm.
say it, but I feel like I'm slightly higher than lukewarm, but like I'm not like, oh my god, amazing. Like this is like I can't wait to play what's
Mhm.
next. I think I'm kind of like, this is cool. I like it's like a good little
Yeah.
it's a good little education, like exercise and good like history lesson. And I would say that
Yeah.
there's there was I wouldn't say it, like there was definitely fun in the multiplayer. I'll give you that. Like I don't know if I actually truly genuinely would say that I had fun during the campaign. I think the fun was definitely one of those situations where we were just kind of commenting like, haha, like look at this and stuff like that, or I was just like
Mhm.
teabagging for no reason or whatever. So but yeah, also as far as our things in general, as far as like our performance, there were times where like if you see my like the vods of our streams on the YouTube channel, the Ready Press Play YouTube channel, there's a lot of stuttering that I had experienced during the game. Dan didn't experience as much as I did, but there's a lot of like momentary like frame drops and like screen freezes, but the game is still
Mhm.
running and stuff like that. I don't know if it's a Series X thing. I don't know if it's an optimization thing. Like, I mean, so it's optimized for Series X, but apparently, like, there was some weird hiccups that happened. I don't think it happened during the first stream, if I'm not mistaken, but it definitely happened on the other streams and stuff like that. They didn't. It wasn't too cumbersome. I don't think. In general, I was able to play with it than against it. So I don't know. Do you have anything to say about the performance of the game?
No, I did not have any technical hiccups like that. I think maybe like once or twice, a few times through the whole playthrough, but not to the extent that you were having them. It almost makes me wonder if it had something to do with the fact that you were the one streaming the game.
I was thinking
Um,
more along the lines like I want to say because like I've had hiccups with like my Series X in general, like my X whenever like
mhm.
Ori crashed on me or whatever, I'm thinking that there's some kind of situation where like the Series X in general, like the actual console, has issues with streaming the assets. If I like that, does that
Mm.
sound weird, or am I just like making shit up out of my I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like I mean, you could be onto something there. There could be a more widespread problem with the console. It could also be that with Microsoft, the way that they support backwards compatibility is like you got all these old games that just kind of run on the Series X, but we don't know to which extent they're being tested thoroughly, right? Like I'm sure they're being tested, but there could be gaps here and there, right? Like there could be something that these games are doing that was not a problem in previous hardware that becomes a potential problem in current hardware that are not necessarily being caught in testing because maybe they happen more rarely or there's a certain amount of circumstances that would cause them or maybe they are being caught in testing but they're not major enough to warrant a fix, to warrant a programmer going back to that situation to fix it when maybe it's a rare occurrence or
And
only occurs
it can't be replicated that easily, I would imagine, since
yeah
it's seemingly random. Like sometimes
yeah
there's nothing on screen, and sometimes there's a lot of things on screen. So I don't know.
hmm Yeah, so yeah, I don't know about that. I do want to shout out the one interesting moment that we had in the game where we found a hidden room based on the difference between the old assets and the new assets. They had basically I think covered
A
the
wall.
the entrance.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they put a wall on the new assets that blocked the entrance to this room, but there was no collision there. We could still go behind the wall and it just see through the world. And when we switched to the old assets, it turns out that there was a room there in the old assets. So that was a very interesting one, and it
And
made me wonder why that one wasn't fixed.
it was so weird seeing when we okay, so when you have the old assets, you have the wall and it's covering it, right? You can't see through it, but
Hmm
and the new assets, because it's an invisible room, you can see like we could see like the spiral of like the level of how it was designed and how everything's
hmm
connected and stuff like that, and it's really weird. It almost reminds me of like Ocarina of Time, because like I've seen like what is the word I'm looking for, whenever you have the ROMs and you're like damn it, that basically dev mode, where like
Yeah.
I can't think of the word I'm thinking of, but basically
Is it like
there's
flyover or something like
it's like
that?
yeah,
Or
like flyover, but basically, yeah, you can just basically like just take the camera and move it anywhere you want and see,
yeah.
and you can zoom out as far as you can, and then you can basically just see the game. Like it's literally looks like
Hmm.
like it doesn't look like this like lived-in world where like it's a sprawling. It's just it now looks like a game because you can just sort of like zoom out and just see everything
Yeah.
just kind of like as is or whatever, and you can just see all the wheels turning, and it almost kind of like ruins the magic just a little bit for me because you can just sort of see it's you can see the game, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah,
Yeah, because like with games, like an efficient way to develop games is that you're only really creating and rendering the assets that the player can ever see, right? So, for instance, like a lot of times, if you see a mountain in the distance, like that mountain, like only that side of the mountain really exists because there's no reason to render, the other side of the mountain that nobody's ever going to be able to see from not only like an art perspective, but especially from a processing perspective, right? Like, there's no reason to be processing that side of the mountain that nobody's going to ever see, and games have to be so cautious about what they're rendering and what they're not rendering to keep things performant. So it's
and
always interesting when you get to do that from a player's perspective and see that, kind of see the seams, right? Like, see where things don't really connect or where they do connect, and like, the things that you thought looked like something, like, oh, it looked like there was all this stuff over there, but there actually isn't. So yeah, it's
yeah.
it's it's interesting to see that stuff
I
for
just did a
sure.
quick Google search. I was looking for the word I was looking for was debug mode. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
it's
fair
like
enough.
debug mode lets you do that thing where you can just fly the camera anywhere or just load any asset you
Mm.
want or whatever. So, yeah, it kind of did remind me of it, and I don't know. I guess there's a part of me that wishes I didn't see that, you know. But I guess there's also a part of me that likes it. You know, that was really cool, and it's
Yeah.
very. It was like there's a part of me that actually wants to questions like who fucked up is like, you know, how do you mess that up, you know, why do you put up a wall that doesn't have a collision on, and yeah, like that just seems really weird and very much like a, I guess definitely an oversight, but maybe I feel like I'm blowing it out the water more than it
The
is than I
weird
need
so
to.
the weirdest one with that one is that that one would definitely be caught by testing, I feel like. And that one, because it wasn't that hard to find. And that one would definitely be like reported on at a high priority to fix. Like, because when we report bugs in dev, like you give them priorities, right? So like if it's something that happens very like rarely and then most players are unlikely to find or encounter in their playthrough, you may call that like a priority 4, like, okay, that's a low priority, but something like that would be more like a priority 2 or something. And those are the bugs that always do get fixed or are supposed to get fixed. Versus priority fours or whatever, a lot of times are the things that are like, okay, well, we'll get to that eventually. If you run out of time, you just don't. So it's just kind of, I don't know, man. Like, it just kind of surprises me that that one made it in, and it makes me wonder if there's more of a story to that. Like, if maybe there's a reason why that one is still there.
Yeah,
Like,
and it hasn't been patched since, you know, because that, you know,
yeah,
The Master Chief Collection has been getting like 50 gigabyte patches and stuff like that. So, of course,
yeah.
most of it's online stuff, but like, yeah,
I feel like it must be one of those things where they left there intentionally, almost like it's like a little cool like Easter egg or something. Like, I don't know. It's odd that they would see it that way, but maybe they do for some reason. I don't know.
okay.
Um, yeah. Okay. On that note, do you have any final thoughts, Louis? Do you wanna score this game in any way, or
Yeah,
should we
yeah.
not do
I
that?
think I've pretty much landed on settled on a score. I think it's a good game, so it's easily a 7 for me as far as there's a part of me that actually kind of sort of believes that there's like it holds up on a modern day. Like I don't think that this game would set the world on fire and be revolutionary if it came out today. Like if it were
Hmm.
to just drop now in 2021. But I think that there's like a definitely a situation where like I can see like, oh, it's an indie team, you know, they're making a game, and you know, like there's because like obviously the game is so confined and like limited in scope and stuff like that by
Hmm.
today's standards. So I think that there's something there that you know people can like latch onto as far as like gameplay, like gunplay, multiplayer. I think those are the two main strongest points that it's got going for it, and the music. These actually that's three things right there. Everything it does,
Hmm.
those three things it does very well to the point
Hmm.
where I would even say that yeah, that's those are the strongest things, and I think people can like really latch onto that, and I think it could be a franchise starter, maybe even 2021. So a 7 for me.
All right. I think I would probably give it a 6.
Oh, okay.
Not to get overly, like, I think it's fine. That's usually what that means, right? Like, okay, fine, whatever. Like a little bit above mediocre. And I bet Halo fans would like be so angry at hearing me say that. But keep in mind, I have no nostalgia really for this game. I'm going back and just playing it now as a newcomer. And I do feel like if I put more time into the multiplayer and I played it,
We did
more
a whole
matches with
stream of it.
you and
Yeah.
yeah, and other people, I feel like that would probably bring it up because that was the best part of the game to me. But because we only did it for like that one, half an hour or whatever, then it wasn't enough to really push it further. So I'll leave it at a 6 for now, but with the potential to go up. But you know what? The tendency is that the franchise will only go up from here, as far as I know. Like people look back on Halo 1 fondly because it started it all and people are nostalgic for it. But I hear pretty consistently that it's not, it's kind of the Uncharted one of the franchise where it's like it's gotten much better after that. So I'm
I
excited. I'm excited to see where it goes.
I just genuinely, a part of me doesn't hope that like the series peaks at Halo 2. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
that would suck if like Halo 2 was the best Halo to ever Halo, and then after that, it just like we play it and it's like, oh man, we got our hopes up, because we definitely, I would say we're definitely like happy and geared towards what's coming next. Like it's awesome
Yeah.
that we can jump into Halo 2 at our own leisure instead of having to wait years between sequels. So yeah, I am definitely. I think we're both optimistic and hopeful for what's to come, and I just genuinely want to know. I just genuinely want to know where does the where does the cliff, where is that at? Also, side note, I know something about Halo 2 that I'm gonna just share. Uh, I know a little bit about like game facts or game trivia or
Mhm.
whatever, and apparently what I do know is that Halo 2's E3 trailer was all bullshit. It was all like just made up and like faked footage or whatever that they just sort of like put together and stuff, like just okay, we're gonna do it. And then like Halo 2 was just like the developers were just like their offices were on fire and they're trying to figure out like running around with their heads cut off trying to figure out, okay, how are we gonna make this game that we promised at E3 and stuff like that. And then what ended up happening is everyone, like when the game did ship, everyone was like, oh my god, it's so awesome, and everyone loved it and stuff like that, which apparently Halo 2, their campaign got cut. Like I guess they had to ship it, and they had more story in the works and stuff like that that they just literally like abruptly ended. So Halo 2 ends in a cliffhanger. And so,
Mm.
yeah, that's kind of interesting that we may. I don't know if I may or may not get frustrated with that, because that kind of sucks that they didn't just delay the game. They just rushed to meet their deadline, and we didn't know what true ending they had in store for us. But of course, they would have presumably resolved it in Halo 3. But yeah,
We'll see about that. We'll see how it turned out when we actually get to play Halo 2, probably in a bit. I don't know, probably like next month or something. Louis, do you think realistically we're gonna get to play all the Halo games before Halo Infinite comes out?
I don't know. I think if it's a priority, we probably could do it, because there's plenty of time between now and November. But also,
Mhm.
we're already basically on April 1st, and it's crazy that the first 3 months of the year have already come and gone, and we've only just barely
Yep.
finished Halo 1. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I could see a situation where we play like 1, 2, and 3 and then get to Infinite potentially.
Mm.
Especially because those are supposedly the better ones in the franchise. I think 4 and 5 takes some
Yeah.
weird turns for some fans, but we'll see. Do you want to bring me back up and then we'll wrap this up?
Yep. All right. You're back.
All right, awesome. So on that note, it is time to end. Thank you so much for joining us for another special episode of Ready Press Play. I almost said like Ready Play Network for some reason. Remember, you can reach the podcast at readyplaynetwork.com or simply at Ready Press Play on Twitter and TikTok. You can reach Lewis at
Chakalaka 88.
and me at the Dan Lima. See you next time. Bye bye.
See ya.